SC16, your home for everything Ithaca and Nashville. It starts right now. Hello and welcome to another edition of the SC16 podcast. I'm Matt Rahemba, and as always, I'm joined by Steve Altieri and Jonah Restuccio. And guys, it's just another great day to be a Bomber because today we're lucky enough to be joined by current ESPN Baseball Tonight host and Sports Center anchor, and he's actually an Ithaca alum, Karl Ravech. Karl, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You guys, you're very welcome, and I'm more proud of being an Ithaca College alum than I am being a Baseball Tonight host. I can say that.
All right, well, let's get right into it. You know, spring training is finally coming to a close, and the regular season is right around the corner. And there was some huge news coming out of Detroit last night as Miguel Cabrera reached a 10-year agreement with the Tigers worth just under $300 million. So are you surprised about the deal? Because right now he's 30 years old, and he's going to be turning 31 in April.
For the reasons you just mentioned and for a number of other reasons, I was particularly shocked by it. I saw that Dave Dombrowski suggested that when you have a superstar, he has found it easier to re-sign him to a long-term deal when there are 2 years left on a contract versus 1 year left. But on many levels, I found it to be a troubling situation, given his age, given he's going to be a designated hitter, given he still had 2 years left on his contract. I'm just wondering who walked into the room and said, we'd like an 8-year extension, and who was it that actually said, you know, that's a really good idea, let's do it, because none of that conversation seems to make much sense to me. Given his position he plays, given his body size, and given the fact that he was still locked there for 2 years. I can see doing it next year. I can certainly see waiting until he's a free agent if you're that intent on re-signing him, and somebody else actually is willing to give someone of that nature that much money. Well, you can always match that contract as well. So I was shocked by it. I don't think it's a good thing for baseball. I think it further distances the teams that can afford guys like that. It raises the demands of many players who would otherwise get $5 and $6 million. Now we'll be looking for $8 and $10 million. There's just not a lot of good to a deal like that, in my opinion, other than for Miguel.
All right, Karl, you guys on Baseball Tonight ranked Mike Trout higher than Miguel Cabrera. With the lucrative contract that Cabrera just got that you've been talking about, do you think the Angels will try and match that with Trout?
You know, I think that as much of that has to do with Trout as it does the Angels. And again, until we walk in their shoes, which I know I'll never do, maybe one of you three will end up playing Major League Baseball at that level. But until we walk in their shoes, you know, if I were an agent for Trout and he's 21, you know, my suggestion wouldn't be let's go out and try to match that. I would think that I would want to get a higher average annual value than Cabrera. So let's say that on average we wanted $30 million a year. And I'm 21. I'd like to sign a 5-year deal. I don't need 8. I don't want 10. Mm-hmm. I want a 5-year deal, and you pay me $150 million. And when I'm 26, we'll revisit this. Because from my perspective as Mike Trout, I don't know what the market's going to look like in 5 years. I could be worth $250 million. So rather than sign away a huge amount of years, I'd be happy to sign a 5-year deal and redo this at 26. Yes. Then I would say let's match, you know, the $300 million that Miguel Cabrera is going to get. But again, agents and individuals think differently about certain things. He may very well say, "Well, Miguel just signed a deal that could be worth upwards of $352 million. I'll sign today for $400 million," and that could happen. I hope it doesn't. I don't think it would be in the best interest of Trout. I don't think it would help the Angels in any way. And at some point, the bubble's going to burst here because you have 3 players on your team that are making, say, $70 million combined, and you have a payroll of 110. So you got 3 guys for 70, and then you have to fill out the rest of your roster, 22 guys for 14, or it's not going to work. The numbers don't add up. So this eventually will have to stop.
All right, one last question about Miguel Cabrera. If you compare him and Hank Aaron, their stats at the same point in their careers are very similar. What are the chances that Miguel Cabrera goes down as one of the all-time great players?
Well, he's definitely going to go down as one of the all-time great hitters, assuming he continues to do this for probably 3 or 4 more years. The other part of arguing against the contract that people, I hope, don't misconstrue it, is this isn't an argument against what he can do. I mean, the guy is a better hitter than Mike Trout. He's a better hitter than anybody else in the game right now, and has been. There aren't many two-time MVP award winners, let alone somebody who can try and do it for a third time and still is in his prime. So he will go down as one of the greatest hitters of all time. His numbers will prove that. His contract will prove that. It would help to win some World Series titles to go along with it, but he's a Hall of Fame player without question.
Now, when you look at the Tigers as a whole now, do you think their grip on the AL Central is starting to loosen when you look at teams like Cleveland and Kansas City, who have clearly improved over the past few years?
Cleveland's gotten better. I really like Kansas City this year. I have the Tigers winning the division because of their pitching. I think the Nathan acquisition was huge for them. I think they needed somebody to close games. That was a disaster last year. That's a big, big deal. The Red Sox proved it. The Yankees have proved it for so many years. The Cardinals have a kid that they love. So I think that was a huge deal for them. I think the Tigers win that division. I think Kansas City makes the playoffs. I think Cleveland takes a bit of a step back. I think a couple of the pitchers that they lost, including Kazmir, is going to hurt. So I like the Tigers to win that division. I do like Kansas City a lot. I think they're at that stage where, like the Pirates last year, kind of matured, and they're all there at the same time. They got an ace pitcher who's in a final year. His deal is going to be pitching for a new contract, James Shields. I like the Royals to get into the playoffs, and I like the Tigers to win the division.
Carl, for the AL West, Oakland won it last year, but this year Prince Fielder went to the Rangers, Robinson Cano went to the Mariners, and if the LA Angels are healthy, Trout, Pujols, Hamilton, do you think Oakland can win it again, or who do you think poses a threat in that division?
Yeah, I think, and this, unfortunately, injuries play a huge role. So anytime you make predictions, that's a part of it. But going with the predictions I made on ESPN.com, I predicted the Angels to win the division and the Rangers to get into the postseason. I don't think the A's are going to do it again this year, and part of that decision was because Parker got hurt. I thought Texas's depth offensively, along with their pitching, which appears as if the injuries are not going to last the whole year, would come back, and as long as they can stay in the race in the beginning, I think that they're going to get into the playoffs. But there's just kind of a weird feeling around the Rangers. I don't think the A's win it. I love the Angels. I think that they are healthy. I think people forget how good Albert Pujols was. I mean, Albert Pujols is going to hit his 500th home run this year. There's just not a lot of guys in Major League history who have done that. And if he is healthy, and you combine him with the best player in baseball in Trout, to go along with Hamilton, who has to be better than he was last year because he was a non-factor after the first couple of months, they're going to be better. They seem to have figured out their pitching a little bit. They have some young arms. I like the Angels, and I like the Rangers in the West, with a nod to the A's for just being a tough team and a tough team to knock out.
All right, let's move to the AL East. Top to bottom, the AL East has to be the deepest division in baseball. Which team do you think has the best chance of winning that division?
Yeah, what do they call that in the World Cup? The group of death. I mean, that's
the group of death.
That's the division of death. In my opinion, you got four teams that could win it: the Orioles, the Yankees, the Rays, and the Red Sox. I think that the way the spring has gone, any one of the four didn't get hurt. Good things happened in all the camps. The Rays were healthy. Pineda pitched really well for the Yankees. Sizemore was a huge story for the Red Sox, and it's going to start on opening day for them. And the Orioles got better late with the additions of a guy like Nelson Cruz, who's going to help the offense as well. So any one of those four will win it. I think the Red Sox are the best team because I think what they did last year will carry over for them this year. Pedroia did not have a good year last year with his power. His thumb is better, and he's pulling the ball. I think he wins the American League MVP this year. Part of that's because I grew up in that area, and I get a lot of fans that depend on me to pick the Red Sox, so I do it a lot, even though they may not be the best. I do like them, though. I think Pedroia has a really good year. I think Lester has a really good year. UR is a joke. People don't really seem to be able to get their head around what he does. We did a spring training game. It's almost as if he doesn't want to have the ball in his hand. He gets it. He throws it so quickly. He throws strikes. Innings end in about 4 minutes when he's on the mound. I like them. The other part of the AL East, which I think will be a huge story, and I really hope he plays well this year, would be Derek Jeter. And the idea that the Yankees in Jeter's final season get to the postseason, play for a World Series, it seems almost fitting. Like, that would be less of a surprise than if they actually that would be less of a surprise than if they didn't play for a World Series. There's nothing about Jeter that shocks me. And having him in a World Series in his final year makes perfect sense. It wouldn't shock me at all.
So now going over to the NL Central, last year we saw 3 playoff teams in St. Louis, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati make the playoffs. So do you see that being the case this year, or should we look for something different?
The Reds have a weird vibe. We were down there. Brandon Phillips came on with us on SportsCenter, and you could just get the sense that there's something not right in that camp. They have a ton of talent. Bruce is an MVP guy. You wish Votto hit more home runs for them. Phillips is a really good fielder. They've dealt with some injuries when Chapman got hit in the face and Lato's is hurt. I'm a Pirates in the playoffs guy. I think they're young pitching. I think Garrett Cole has a big year. I think Pedro Alvarez gets better this year than he was last year. Russell Martin is mature again. They can make up for the loss of A.J. Burnett. McCutcheon is an MVP guy every time he gets on the field. And the Cardinals are just the best team probably in baseball. Their pitching is comical. Their bullpen, they had Joe Kelly go to the 5th spot when he could have been in the bullpen, and last year was great. They could have had Carlos Martinez start, who's like a mini Pedro Martinez. He's going to be in the bullpen in the 8th inning. They just do things right. It's like they have a greenhouse. They just kind of grow players there, and the players are really good. So I like the Cardinals and the Pirates to come out of that Central Division.
In the NL West, the Dodgers are the first team in 15 years to have a higher payroll than the Yankees. Do you think that this could work out in the long run for them, or is it just a season thing that they're just trying to go to the playoffs for?
Well, I mean, their general manager does understand scouting and development, and their president, Stan Kasten, was involved with the Atlanta Braves in the 90s when they won, 88 straight pennants. I do think that it's going to work. I think they're in the position the Yankees used to be in, which was if there's a broken pipe in the house, we will pay somebody to come put a new one in. Meaning, we get a player that goes down, we will go out and buy another one. I think they're in that position. I think they think they're in that position. There's a lot of ego in Los Angeles and Hollywood, and I do think that they will buy themselves a postseason spot, and I think they'll do it for years to come. And that's discounting how good a player Puig can be if they can ever kind of rein him in. Obviously, Kershaw is the best in baseball as far as pitching goes for left-handers. I do. I think the Dodgers can win and win for years, and I don't think there's a really another great team in that division that's going to pose a big threat to them. I think Arizona, prior to some of the injuries that they dealt with, like Corbin going down, was a playoff team, and I believe I actually picked them to get into the postseason as well with Los Angeles. So I had 2 coming out of the Central and 2 coming out of the West and 1 coming out of the East. And I think that the Diamondbacks, when healthy, and with Mark Trumbo in that lineup, have a chance to get into the postseason. But the Dodgers win that division. I mean, the Dodgers, the Tigers, and the Cardinals are dominant teams in their divisions. They could win, in my opinion, their divisions by double digits.
So moving to the NL East, you said only 1 team would come out of this division. A lot of hype has gone to the Mets after the moves they made this offseason. With combining that with the prospects coming up, do you see them having a chance to compete with Atlanta or Washington at the top of the division?
Not this year. I mean, that would not be one of the picks that I would make, the Mets. No, I think the Mets are a couple of years away. I think that obviously Harvey getting healthy, Syndergaard getting up there, Darno hitting for a decent average and playing well behind the plate will pay off in a couple of years. But they have a hard time figuring out who's going to be a shortstop out there, who's going to be their third outfielder. So no, the Mets have made quietly good moves, but certainly not enough to compete with the Nationals. The Braves' injuries of Beachy and Medlin, to me, killed them. I don't think that they have the pitching to compete, and I think Washington is just a notch below Detroit, St. Louis, and Los Angeles as far as teams that could blow away their division. The Nationals are absolutely loaded. Their front 4 are all aces. I think Harper wins the MVP in the National League this year. I think he's ready to do that. sat with him in spring, and he's just an incredibly mature young kid who seems to have, the baseball world by the baseballs, if you will, and he kind of gets everything. So I think Harper, I think their shortstop is completely underrated. He's a stud. A new manager there, the same way that Brad Osmus is in Detroit. Matt Williams, I think those two teams probably win 5 or 6 more games than they did last year because of the new managers and the way that they think. They'll shift a lot more. You never saw that in Detroit. I think that those two guys will be able to relate to the players a little better than Davey Johnson did and Jim Leyland did. So I'm a big Washington Nationals fan.
Now, I got to ask you, it was a new rule this year in Major League Baseball where they decided to get rid of home plate collisions because, we've seen so many star players behind home plate getting injured. So are you a fan of this rule, or do you think they should have just kept home plate collisions the same the way it has been?
Well, they didn't outlaw collisions. I think that is sort of a misnomer. A lot of people assume that teams may do this, but if the catcher has the ball, he does have the right, and he can block the plate. A base runner has the right to knock him over. What the base runner can't do is he can't change his force to home plate. So if he's going to slide, he can't then decide to wipe the catcher out. The catcher cannot block home plate without the baseball. And historically what's happened is the catcher's kind of planted himself in front of the plate, waiting for the ball, and the ball and the runner get there at the same time, and the catcher gets blown up. I think a lot of teams, certainly the Cardinals, I know the Red Sox have discussed it, Brad Osmus in Detroit has talked about it. The idea is we don't want our catchers to ever get run over, so we're never going to have them block the plate. They're going to learn to go get the ball and swipe tag and leave a part of that plate open so the base runner slides. If there's no catcher blocking the plate, you cannot have the collision. But I do believe that many catchers will still block the plate. I'm in favor of that idea because I don't think we've outlawed collisions the same way instant replay has been outlawed arguments. You'll still have players screaming at umpires. Managers will still scream at umpires. So none of those things, I think, dramatically change the game. And I think baseball was smart not to completely outlaw collisions. There's nothing better than a guy around at third base and a right fielder throwing the ball home, wondering how this play is going to turn out. That's smart not to get rid of that idea.
And finally, I know the season hasn't started yet, but when it's all said and done, which 2 teams do you see making it to the World Series?
I think it's not always the same 2 teams, but I would think that the Cardinals are going to get back there because of the way that they play, and I think the Tigers get there this year because of the guys that they have at the starting rotation and the back end of that bullpen and Joe Nathan. And again, let's not dismiss what a contract to Cabrera means. It means Detroit needs to win now. They have him for a long time, but they are in this to win it, not next year or the year after or the year after. This is all about the here and now. They'll fight to get into the World Series. I think Detroit and St. Louis play in the World Series. But every team that I mentioned with regards to blowing their division away, Washington's got a chance to get to the World Series. The Dodgers have a chance to get to the World Series. The Red Sox have a chance to get to the World Series. And I'm not certain that any of the AL West teams do. But those 5 teams, I think, all have a legitimate shot. I really do like the Cardinals and the Tigers to get there this time.
All right, Karl. Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on. It's always great to get a chance to talk to an Ithaca alum, and we all here really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Karl.
It's my pleasure. How are things in Southfield? Is everything going well?
They're going great here. Everything's going great. We actually just started up this podcast, so it's great to have you on. We really appreciate it.
You're actually our first ever guest on the show, so that's pretty cool.
Well, I appreciate that. And why don't we check back again? Are you guys juniors or seniors?
We're freshmen.
We're actually freshmen.
Well, let's do this again. We'll do it next fall. We'll do it. Let's do it in October when we get towards the World Series.
That would be great.
That sounds like a great
That
plan,
sounds great.
Karl.
Once again, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure, guys. Enjoy it.
Hey, have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Well, guys, that was the one and only Karl Ravech, Baseball Tonight host, Sports Center personality, and
Ithaca alum.
Fun story. I didn't want to ask it. Didn't want to be that guy. But Karl Ravech and my gym teacher from high school, great friends. My gym teacher from high school, he played on the Ithaca baseball team, drafted by the Reds. And when he was in college, Karl, he'd travel on the bus. He'd do all his baseball stuff. And now he's at ESPN.
I gotta say, that was pretty cool getting to interview Karl Ravech. I mean, considering we all grew up watching ESPN, watching him on TV, to get a chance to interview him, that was very cool. And one thing that really stood out from what he said, he likes the Dodgers. You know, he likes the Dodgers coming out.
He is set on the Dodgers, and he likes Detroit.
He likes what they've done. He thinks the money is going to get them a playoff spot.
They really did very well last season. They went on a huge run in the middle of the season last year, and there's no doubt that they have a talented team on paper.
Yeah, I agree. I really like what he said about Mike Trout, though. Sign for that 5-year deal, and then visit 5 years later. I really like that idea because
that's a smart move because 10-year contracts, you know, they don't always pan out.
You're set in for 10. If you do 5 and then a separate 5, you could be worth more, you could be worth less. It goes for both sides. I think it works out well. I never thought of it that way.
One other thing that Karl Ravech said about the Detroit Tigers, he was very high on the Tigers, was new manager Brad Ausmus. He's a new young guy replacing Jim Leland. We've seen new young managers, Robin Ventura and Mike Matheny in St. Louis, doing very successful jobs in their first few seasons as managers.
Young guys bringing in energy to a clubhouse.
Yep.
You know, whenever you could have a young guy come in and really energize a clubhouse, you know, like the way Brad Ausmus can, Mike Matheny can, it could do a lot for your team.
I'm not going to lie. He informed me more than I would have ever informed myself just reading. It was awesome.
It's really good to be able to get more of that insider perspective because Karl Ravech, he knows
he's there.
He knows the people. He is with spring training. He sees the business side.
Like he said, he talked to Bryce Harper. He talked to Brandon Phillips.
You said Brandon Phillips. He said he's not feeling. He said things are looking a little shaky in Cincinnati right now. He interviewed Brandon Phillips, So he said, you know, Cincinnati, there could be a few question marks when you look at them there in the NL Central.
And Cincinnati's one of those teams that we were looking at and saying they have the potential to do really well because they took a step up last year.
Brandon Phillips.
They've got new speedster youngster Billy Hamilton coming up.
Exactly.
They lost Chu in the outfield. I mean, Chu, he was a great asset, but he got a bigger contract somewhere else, so I don't blame him for leaving.
So he's not sold on the 3 teams coming out of the NL Central. But, you know, like you said, it's great to have that insider perspective when you always, especially a guy like Karl Ravech, getting a chance to interview him. And he's an Ithaca alum, so it makes it even better for us.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I'm interested to see when we have him. We're going to go away for summer. We're going to have our summers. We're going to come back in October. He said
Fall Classic, baby.
He said
maybe get a chance to get Karl Ravech on the podcast again. You never know.
Well, he said, let's do it in October. And the year after that, I'm like, wow. I would know. I'm not going to lie. I never expected it to be on that way, but I'm happy.
We'll take it.
I think we'll take anything we can get. I mean, it's pretty cool. So, Salty, I think it's time for your always famous top 5 fun Salty facts. What
could possibly be on Salty's mind? You know, he had time to prepare. He never told us.
He never
told us what his top 5 is. So it's a secret to us. We don't know what he's going to say.
He prepared it on his own.
Our producer, Pete, doesn't even know what Salty's going to say. But in reality, do any of us really know what Salty's ever going to say?
Yeah, no one ever knows what Salty's
He's such an unpredictable guy.
He's had some questionable moments, but we never know what's on Salty's mind.
You never know what's on his mind, but let's get right into it.
All right, thanks for that extended introduction right there. In the honor of the ending of the TV series How I Met Your Mother this Monday.
Great show.
Hour-long episode for the final episode. One of the more popular shows on television. I'm going to give you guys my top 3 biggest takeaways from the show.
Let's hear them, baby. Let's go.
At number 3, we've got the hot, crazy scale. All right? So this was one of Barney's inventions, comparing women based off of how hot they are to how crazy they are. A 45-degree line right in the middle. You get to compare and contrast how attractive the woman is. At number 2, we've got nothing good happens after 2 a.m. At 2 in the morning, go home. If you're going out, if you're doing anything else, nothing good will happen. Just go to bed, tuck yourself in, have a good night's sleep. Nothing good happens after 2 a.m. And number 1, the big one, of course, the slap bet. For those of you who don't know, the slap bet is when you take a sporting event, take any random thing, and make a bet on it and say the person who loses gets slapped. They took it to a whole nother level on the show. They had 5 slaps from one character to another, And it was hilarious all season long, and that is something you can apply to your life at home. And that concludes my top 3 for How I Met Your Mother.
Interesting stuff right there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was expecting the top 5, but it's salty.
Top 3.
Top 3 works.
That's what we never know. We never know what we're gonna get out
Top
of
3,
salty.
top 5, random facts. You never know.
It's
I
gonna
don't
be
even
different
know.
Every show.
He doesn't even
Keep
know.
you guys on your seat. Keep you guys on the edge of your seat. But that is going to do it for the SC16 podcast. Once again, thank you so much to Karl Ravech for coming on the show. It was so great having him, and you learned so much just because he has an insider perspective. Learned so much about the major leagues going into this year. So thank you so much, Karl Ravech. And once again, for Steve Altieri, Jonah Restuccio, and our producer, Pete, I'm Matt Rahemba, and this is SC16.